Everyone, we are going to get our meeting started. I call the meeting of March 12, 2025 to order, and to get our meeting going in recognition of Women's History Month and International Women's Rights on March 8, Councilmember Gardner is going to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. If we can all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I acknowledge that the land we gather, live, and work on today, currently known as the City of Palm Springs, is the original homelands of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. The sovereign band of Agua Caliente people have stewarded this land throughout the generations and continue to steward this land for all future generations. We honor and respect the many diverse indigenous people still connected to this land. City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
All right, and to start us off today, we've got a 10-minute presentation from the Palm Springs Animal Shelter, newly named. Oh, sweet. All right, well, let's go.
Friends of the Palm Springs Animal Shelter is a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to transfer the lives of extraordinary advocacy, to inspire compassion and positive relationships between the community, action, and humane education. We have been supporting the Palm Springs Animal Shelter since 1996, raising funds for shelter operations and the construction of the current facility. Upon opening the new facility in 2011, back then the city actually managed the day-to-day services and operations. In November of 2012, Friends entered an agreement with the city to operate the programs and do the day-to-day management of the open admissions shelter at that point in time. Our fundamental belief is that we believe every animal deserves a loving, safe, healthy environment in which they can thrive. We are committed to operating under a no-kill philosophy, only euthanizing animals for extreme behavior issues, injuries, or illnesses causing the animal extreme pain. To address the name situation, the nonprofit Friends of the Palm Springs Animal Shelter is now operating under a new name, Greater Palm Springs Animal Allies, a better name that represents the scope of our work and our future work. Getting into the numbers for 2024, we had a total of intakes of 2,688 animals. Again, this was a shelter really designed to take in about 1,000 animals annually. Our stray numbers were almost 1,400, animal control confiscated, about 312. Guardian surrenders were in the 514 range, adoption returns 229. We kept some TNRs in at 72. We transferred in a very small amount, 168 animals as well. Our outcomes were 2,870. Question is, how can we outcome more animals than we intaked that year? Starting January 1st, we still have a full shelter with animals from the year before. So we were able to do some catch up in 2024 and get more animals out the door and into loving homes at that point in time. Vast majority of them were adoptions, return to owners, transferred out. We transferred out more animals than we transferred in. We had some animals die in care. We did euthanize some animals for medical and behavior situations as well. But I'm happy to report we have live release rates of 91.2 for cats and 97.6% for dogs. To understand those numbers, for the intakes, the majority of our intakes, 54%, were brought in by the public and also by our animal control officers. And a small number were friendly cats that were trapped in our TNR program as well that did not make sense to release out. The next largest amount were owner surrenders, about 514 or 19%. These are animals that we took in from Palm Springs residents only. The main reasons that people surrendered their animals were they no longer could care for them. People going into assisted living, moving to situations where they could no longer care for their animal as well, people passing away, a lot of those situations. For people that came in and said that they wanted to surrender their animal because they could no longer afford it, we have wraparound programs to help those people. In many of those situations, we successfully had services in place so they could keep their animals, whether it was medical services or food or care or behavior help as well at that point in time. About 11%, 11.5% were confiscated animals that animal control officers brought in. That was about 312 animals. These consist of animals that were in dangerous or neglected situations that we held at that point in time. Returned, we had about 8.5% of animals returned. That's a usual typical average you see across the United States of people who adopt and bring animals back. Main reasons that animals get returned back are somebody in the family they did not realize was allergic, and they found out after adopting that animal just didn't end up being a good fit with perhaps the other animals in their homes, things like that for the most part. But it's really a learning experience. It gives us an insight to that animal and what might be a future better home for it as well. Transfers from other communities, that was the lowest percent of our intakes, about 6%. And these were situations where we were helping other communities in emergencies. For example, last year, the fires in Hawaii, the shelter there reached out asking for other shelters to help them and help with the displacement of animals we had. We stepped up and took a few from Hawaii as well. Recently in late 2024 with the LA fires, we brought animals in from LA as well to help them in those situations. It's always good to help your other communities because you never know when we may need help ourselves here. So we're helping to develop those relationships as we move forward. We're also bringing in, when we have room, the smaller dogs, and that is typically what the people in our community are looking for or want. So it's sort of a supply and demand. So if we can help provide supplies of smaller animals that people are looking for, that's what we want to do as well. On the outcome side, when you look at our adoptions, the majority of our adoptions happened in our region here, but also across several state lines. We have a great relationship with Frisky Business. They take all of our cats in there in the Rimrock Plaza, and they adopt out cats from our shelter all the time. We also have a great relationship with the Westin and Rancho Mirage. We just did our 73rd dog adoption through their hotel, and we have placed dogs in Florida, New York, Canada, Maine, you name it. They're all across the United States these days, which is amazing for us. Outcomes returned to owners. We had about 310 dogs and 45 cats that came in as strays that we were able to reunite them with their owners as well. Thank God we have advancements like microchips that help that happen very quickly so that we can make that happen. We transferred out about 202 animals last year as well. So we have developed a lot of good relationships with other rescues across the country and in Canada, where we are moving animals that are having difficulties to adopt out here as well. We always vet those other organizations. We only transfer to other no-kill philosophy type organizations out there. The harder numbers, we did have about 103 animals die in our care. Vast majority of those were cats, about 60 of them, and 10 dogs, and about 31 wildlife as well. We always do our very best to save every animal that comes to our doors, but there are times, unfortunately, that there just isn't much we can do for them. Especially in those cat numbers, they tend to be small kittens that just don't thrive. If you look at our euthanasia rates for behavior reasons, very, very small number, and we're very proud of this. We only euthanized 5 dogs due to severe behavior issues, and these were dogs deemed unsafe to really place in our community. Those are our last resorts when we do those. We look for other rescues that potentially those animals can go to. But again, our philosophy is we want to keep our community safe, so we're not going to place a dangerous animal in our community at this point in time. We never, ever, ever euthanize for time or space. We always find a way to make room, either through our foster program or through creative ways of sheltering within the shelter. Some of the other services that Greater Palm Springs Animal Allies are providing these days are trap, neuter, and return of community cats. Again, if people don't really understand what this is, if you look around your communities, you will see community cats roaming all over the place. It's, this program is very effective where we trap those cats, spay or neuter them, give them medications, take care of any medical needs they may have as well, and we ear tip their ears so visually you can tell that that animal was done. We did 1,464 cats last year alone. And again, this is a program, thank you, which is partially funded through the city as well. Low-cost vaccines, we did over 6,000 vaccines last year. We have a public open clinic on Thursdays and Sundays now where the community can come in and get that service at this point in time. We have a community food bank that we run as well, again, helping people that need help to keep their animals. We did over 5,936 cats and dogs, providing them with meals last year. Overall, we are touching the lives of 16,500 animals annually through these various programs. Also, this is about 2024, but new for 2025. We are on the cusp of opening our wildlife center in Indio. So we're putting the final touches on that to open that facility. And we're in the midst of talking with Desert Hot Springs to open up a standalone wellness center up there as well at this point in time. Looking at the financials, total costs to run all these programs were about $5.8 million last year. Our city contract is about $1.2 million to do that. So the city is funding about 20% of the funds that are needed to run our shelter here in Palm Springs. Why is that number so huge? It's amazing what it takes to really care and provide these services out there. Significant increases to our budget last year was people. We went from 2.8 million to almost 3.5 million just in people, over a $600,000 increase. A lot of this was based on, we raised our base level of hourly wage to $20 an hour, a livable wage, which was really needed. That really helped us to stabilize our staffing as well as we move forward. Given all the animals that we're seeing and the need for the care, we had to add a second vet. We had to add an additional RVT to the staff, TNR support to continue to do those programs, and a transport coordinator to help develop those relationships and move animals out to other communities as well. Animal supplies, those costs continue to skyrocket. We went from about $475,000 to $533,000 last year alone. That includes food, litter, medical supplies, things like that. If you look, though, for us to be able to do what we do and continue our no-kill philosophy, we had over 85,000 volunteer hours. If you put that, given the federal standards, that's would be a value of about $2.3 million in volunteer that we have, given about 600 volunteers that come in and help us on a weekly basis. Our challenges. We love the work we do, but of course, with everything, things are difficult to do. Our facility, which opened in 2011, aesthetically, it's amazing. It's one of the best-looking shelters out there, but functionally, it really is difficult to run progressive sheltering practices in the building. We don't have enough space for animals, especially for the large dogs. Cats are challenging in the summer. We are really designed to hold many less animals at this point in time. Our other challenges are policies that are out there, property and HOH policies. There are limits to breeds and sizes out there, numbers of animals that people can have, and community cat difficulties with communities really understanding the community cat, feral cats that are out there. Questions?
Questions, council?
A comment, if I can. I just really appreciate this presentation, Dan, all of the work that all of you do at the animal shelter. And I appreciate the information on humanely euthanized animals for the medical and behavioral reasons, because I think there's a lot of confusion generally in the public about what that means. And I like your quote about we never euthanize for time or space. Like, that's the ideal, right? That's what we want
Right.
all of the shelters in the region to get
Strive for, yes.
and strive for. So I appreciate you being very open about that information so that we all understand it. And just thank you so much for my 2 beautiful kitties that I got from you all 5 years ago now.
Well, thank you for adopting.
Yes.
Any other? Mayor Pro Tem.
Really appreciated this overview, Dan. And just one other thing I just wanted to highlight as well is just how much your volunteers add to the culture and the ambiance of Demuth Park.
Yes.
They are always there at all hours of the day, kind of showing the best examples of how we should be walking our pets and training our pets. And there's so many people who are at that park. We have soccer players, we have softball, we have kids, we have pickleball players. And so they really add to the community in that really special park. And so
I would agree with you.
I don't think they kind of get the recognition they need in that space. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? I wanted to end with one of our animals here.
Mayor Bernstein's got a question.
Mayor
I'll
Bernstein.
stay as mayor, fine, thank you.
Oh, Jesus. I just promoted him again.
Well, so thank you, Dan. Thank you to all the staff and the board for the work you do. I mean, seeing all these numbers, and I've seen some of these before, is really very impressive. And the volunteers. I mean, 85,000 hours of volunteers this is what makes our city very special. I just want to go back to a couple of things. Is that you talked about the animals served now. What percentage increase do you think that is from 2012 or so when you started? I know you weren't here.
Yeah,
But
definitely significant numbers of increases, probably thousands at that point in time. About 40%.
about 40% higher.
Exactly.
And you said the city pays approximately. You're just to clarify for the public, this is a city building, and we contract with a nonprofit to run it. So
Right.
currently we're paying 20% of the cost. What percentage of the cost do you think we were paying 10 years?
I believe it was about 70% when it originally opened.
The city was paying 30% or 70%.
Yes, the city was paying 70% of the budget when it first opened. Now
Okay.
it's about 20%.
Okay. And the other thing, I guess you put in here cost, but the cost of actual medicines and other things must be significantly
Yes,
higher.
costs have usually gone up over the years. We estimated when we originally opened, the costs were about $250 an animal. We probably spend about $1,000 an animal these days. One example was Lammy here, a stray that was found in Palm Springs. As she is blind, she has a tumor on the front of her head. We just did some medical tests and found out, fortunately, it is benign. But again, this is a special needs that takes a lot of time, attention, and medical care that we obviously provide. Many other shelters, when this dog would have come in, would have euthanized automatically. Of course, we would not have.
I just also, you said, so you're about double what your capacity was supposed to be, is that right now?
Yes, the shelter is really designed to handle about half the animals that we have in it. And I invite everybody, even the public, anybody's welcome to come down and tour and see the facility and see what we do. Especially in our large dog size, we are doubled up with large dogs most of the time these days. But we should be seeing, given the size of the shelter, handling about 1,000 animals a year. And as you can see from the numbers, we're about 3,000.
So you have additional land on that property?
There is additional land. When the shelter was originally designed, it was valued engineered, and a whole section of the large dog ward was eliminated. But from what I understand, the infrastructure is there to put that addition on in the future.
Okay. And you mentioned also the Desert Hot Springs and India, the wildlife. Will that take any pressure off of the shelter? Or?
So again, we're doing a lot of things in our shelter, extra things like the vaccine clinics. Again, it's really not designed to be doing those type of things. So a lot of those extra wraparound services, we do plan to move up to Desert Hot Springs. We will, of course, for City of Palm Springs residents, always offer those type of services there, but it'd be great to be able to move some of these things off-site. The goal, though, for Desert Hot Springs is really to add wellness, low-cost wellness services for individuals, because it's very difficult to get your animals in to be seen here.
Right. And I guess just the last question, since the public is watching, is there anything else the public can do to help support your nonprofit?
Adopt is the first thing. Consider us when you're adopting. Of course, donate. We always need additional funds. That only does not mean monetary as well. We can always use towels and other supplies. We have an Amazon wish list on our website as well. And give your time as well. Even though we have a host of volunteers, we could always use more to help us out.
Okay. And one last question. You're doing the summer camp again for the kids?
We are doing the summer camp again.
Okay.
And thank you for helping to support that.
Do you want to just tell a little bit about that?
So we have a summer camp that happens in June. It's out of our community room at the shelter. And again, it's one of our major goals to educate and start educating youth at a very young age about humane treatment of animals. It's a fun camp where they're learning about animals. We have a wildlife time. We have the ACOs come in and talk as well. We talk about importance of spay and neuter. It's a great time. So we'll have more of that probably in the next couple of weeks on our website and start opening up camp slots.
Okay, great. Thank you again so much, Dan.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reddy, anything from you?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Rossi, what was, like today, what's the population at the shelter today?
Today it is, hold on, I have those numbers. I look every morning.
Approximately.
Approximately, we have approximately 300, I think it was 301 animals in the shelter today. Again, more than we really should have at this point in time.
Because your
300
basic capacity would be about how many, comfortably?
Capacity is in the section here. Let me find it in one section.
About 170, okay.
So-
Go ahead.
Our capacity is, the facility is designed to hold about 98 cats and 72 dogs. We currently have 144 cats and 142 dogs and 15 others. Again, the facility was never designed for small animals like bunnies and guinea pigs and things like that. So they kind of end up in meeting rooms. I have a bird in my office right now as well, so.
And so, and I asked that because, you know, since it was built and opened, it was so popular and so important that it was always been over capacity. So fast forward all these years, the wear and tear. So I know you were having some problems with the heating, cooling.
Yes.
How is that? And I say that because there are some people in the community who maybe have offered if we need a new HVAC system, that they'd be willing to step up. So I don't know if that's been remedied or if that's still an ongoing issue.
So city maintenance has done a bang-up job. I know the city invested a lot of time and money into our HVAC this past year. I'm happy to report it's probably about 90% better than it used to be, but we still have zones where we have troubles, especially in the surgery wards and up front in the community areas. Again, when we have these big swings in temperatures, it seems to be difficult for the building to catch up and get managed for the most part. Of course, areas that we want cooler, like the surgery rooms, last week we were having difficulty because they were hitting about 78, 79 degrees. We do contact the city, and they typically are very responsive in adjusting and taking care of those situations at this point in time.
Okay, well, I will forward to the city manager some information I got from some community members who might be interested in providing additional assistance on a voluntary basis, so I will get that to you. And I would just say, your current contract with the city, when is that coming up for renewal?
That comes up in 2026, so we're, I believe, going to start looking at that this year, and again, looking at the costs, but also the needs of the actual building itself, too.
And I would just note that, you know, it is unique that that our shelter is no-kill, and the reason we're able to do this is like you said, when we started, the city was about 70% of that funding, and now it's much less because of your ability to do the things, fundraising and things to make it work.
Yes.
So it's certainly in our best interest to make sure that this partnership continues. And I want to thank you and all the staff and all the volunteers for the good work that you're doing at the shelter.
Thank you, David.
Dan, what was the operating budget in 2012?
It was 1.6 or 7 from what
And
we
the
remember.
The city was contributing 70% of that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Back then.
Dan, and please thank your board, all the volunteers that go in, day out to make the shelter what it is today. And good job on the presentation. Appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing the wish list for 26 renewal.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any members of the public who would like to ask questions regarding the presentation? Okay, we are good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, to share some proclamations that were made this month. The month of March is being recognized as Blood Disorders Awareness Month in the city of Palm Springs. Hemophilia is a rare genetic condition affecting at least 4,000 people in California. In Palm Springs, the Hemophilia Foundation of Southern California supports 6 families in our city that are affected by bleeding disorders. 43 families in the greater Coachella Valley are serviced by the association. Robert C. Allen Day was proclaimed on March 4. Robert Allen has resided in Palm Springs for the last 60 years. He had a successful 40-year career in physical therapy, during which time he served on the Physical Therapy Inland Empire Board. He was inducted into the Palm Springs Rotary on March 4, 1964, and currently continues to serve on the board of directors. March is also American Red Cross Month, recognizing the compassionate acts of people committed to helping their neighbors in need. The American Red Cross of Riverside County remains unwavering in its commitment to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of today's emergencies. Earlier today, we recognized volunteers with the local Palm Springs Red Cross, Tempe Essel, Mike Keene, and Edward Mooney, who serve on the board for their volunteerism and presented them with certificates of recognition. Jane Fonda Action Day was proclaimed on March 10. Jane has demonstrated her unwavering commitment to environmental activism and climate justice throughout her lifetime, and she has established the Jane Fonda Climate PAC. She now supports climate champions and promotes decisive action on climate change at all levels of government. Her work addressing climate change closely aligns with Palm Springs' commitment to environmental stewardship and sustainable practices. So we had a nice full month of proclamations and recognition. Next item is the acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will discuss the order of agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items to remove for separate discussion. Do we have, any items staff or council members would like removed from the consent calendar? Councilmember Bernstein, you're always good for a comment at least.
I am. I'm going to recuse on 1C, and I have a comment on 1G.
1G comment?
And recuse on 1C.
Okay. Good on everywhere else? I'd like to entertain a motion for the, sorry.
I also have a comment on 1G as well.
MPT.
I'm actually abstaining on that one. So.
You're abstaining on 1G? 1C. Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda with Councilmember Bernstein abstain on 1C and comments being made on 1G by Councilmember Bernstein and Mayor Pro Tem. Motion Garner, second by Reddy. Beautiful, thank you. At this time, I invite our City Attorney, Jeff Ballinger, to provide a report on the closed session.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the public, the City Council met in closed session to discuss the 3 items that are listed on the agenda. There was no reportable action. However, Mayor Pro Tem Soto did recuse from the real property negotiations based on a campaign contribution that was received by her within the last 12 months by GRIT.
All right, thank you. Next item is public testimony. Public testimony. This time's been set aside for members of the public to address council on non-public hearing items. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Today we have one speaker, Michael Joseph Pitkin.
Michael Joseph Pitkin, 2A. If you do not have any fair housing available in Palm Springs, then why do you have an office here? In 5 years, the Palm Springs Fair Housing Office would not even open their doors to me, answer their phone, or answer emails. This grant issue reminds me of the same treatment I received from CVAG, Coachella Valley Association of Governments, racist, prejudiced, and biased deterrence program. At least Jewish Family Services of San Diego pretended to care for their grants. Hire new fair housing staff, someone who will actually work with the client. That would remove many impediments right away. I'm going to have to go to the Palm Springs Animal Shelter for services for humans.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any online speakers?
We have no online speakers.
All right, beautiful. Next item is the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar, noting abstention 1C by Councilmember Bernstein and comments being made on 1G. We have a motion by Grace Garner, second by David Reddy. All right, consent calendar is approved. Comments on 1G, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Arts Commission and the staff who worked on this. I am loving the discussion around the community around shade, and that shade can exist in all forms. We can have shade from trees, from art, from more traditional shade, from I'm spacing on the word.
Radical trees?
Radical shade. Radical shade. We can have radical trees too, but especially radical shade. And this is one tiny piece, and we're going to keep moving forward on it. So big thanks to the commission that helped move this forward.
Councilmember Bernstein.
Yes, I also want to thank the Arts Commission both for picking some great works of art, for beautifying our parks, and also for doing a functional use of art with the shade, which is clearly something we need. I think it's also a great example of what we could do potentially elsewhere in the city. I know a lot of our commercial areas in downtown, we have public art, and we're always looking for other types of shade, especially as we see our climate increase. So I would hope that the commission keeps looking towards that going forward. And next, if you could look at water art, that would be a great way to get water features in our parks. So just a suggestion. But thank you very much to the commission. That's what
Thank you. Next public hearing, item 2A, which is it's a public hearing to discuss Community Development Block Grant 2025-2029, 5-year consolidated plan. And we're here to present the item, staff report.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm here as a procedural requirement by HUD to report on our 5-year con plan. My name is Noe Arechiga. I am the Community Development Administrator, here to serve on the procedural requirement by HUD to present on the 5-year con plan, 5-year impediments to analysis to impediments, and the annual action plan, and also to give you a brief report on the federal funding and kind of the climate that's kind of developing behind the funding that we are receiving. So obviously, CDBG is federal funding and is something that can definitely be affected by what's going on with the changes with the new administration. This is something that we continue to monitor on a daily basis. We have discussions daily, and to make sure that the city is strategically positioned to make adjustments as necessary. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Daryl. He is our consultant for CDBG, and he's gonna be going over a little bit more detailed on those reports.
Thank you, Noah. As Noah mentioned, my name is Daryl Stamps, managing partner for the Ramsey Group. Over the last 5 months, we've been working pretty close with your staff, city staff, to complete 3 very important documents. One is the 5-year consolidated plan. The second is the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And the third is your annual action plan. And I mentioned that these are very important because with the successful completion and submission of these plans, the city is able to receive their annual housing and urban development funding as an entitlement city. So today I'll be very, very brief. What I would like to do is go over a set of recommendations for each plan. Again, I'll be as brief as possible here. And at the end, leave some time for the City Council, Honorable Mayor, to answer or ask any questions that you may have, make any input that you may have regarding the recommendations. So, next slide. Is that me? Oh, that'll be me, okay.
This is a self-service shop.
That's right. All right, so I'll just do this, right? That's it? Okay, did it. Look at that. Look at that. First of all, I appreciate you all not making me go directly after that cute puppy. That was, that's tough. All right, so let's get going here. Let's start with the consolidated plan. The plan provides a comprehensive strategy for how the city will use its community development block grant funding, again, from HUD. We are presenting or recommending 5 strategies for the consolidated plan that we are recommending the city focus on over the next 5 years. One is affordable housing development and preservation. The second is homelessness prevention and housing support. The third is community development and public services. The fourth is economic development. And the fifth is fair housing and anti-discrimination. What I would like to do is quickly go through these. You have the information in your packets. You have, again, any questions, definitely here to answer those questions and definitely provide the opportunity for input. Okay, so the second plan was your analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. The AI examines the barriers to fair housing and includes recommendations and actions to address the identified barriers. So we came up with 4 recommendations as relates to implementing the analysis of impediments. The first one is to provide fair housing education that targets underserved populations, including racial and ethnic minorities, the LGBTQ+ individuals, and persons with disabilities. Establish a tenant-landlord mediation program to resolve disputes. Establish a legal counsel program for low-income individuals who are facing housing discrimination. Continue to encourage the development of affordable housing in areas with better access to public services, schools, and transportation. Just want to add that a lot of these items we are doing, the city is doing already. It's really a continuation of the work that you guys are currently doing. The second plan is your annual action plan. The first year AAP aligns how the city will use its expected $344,683 in CDBG allocation or HUD funding. This year, we really have only 2 programming uses to recommend, and that is public services, which is $51,000. That would go to the Fair Housing Housing Council here that we are currently using, and the residential rehabilitation program of $292,981. Let me quickly say that the fair housing category will be largely responsible for moving forward, implementing some of the recommendations from the analysis of impediments to fair housing. So I think that was brief enough. I've concluded, and certainly here for any questions or suggestions relating to these recommendations.
Council, do we have any questions? Councilmember Gardner, you look like you're ready for a question.
I do. It was just, you did, it was a quick presentation. I was not ready. So you mentioned, these are things that the city is already working towards, which I recognize. But are there things that are being proposed where you feel like there's good deal of room for improvement, or things where we don't necessarily have as much capacity? Can you just talk a little bit about what we are doing now and what we could either do better, or maybe what we're not really doing and would need to add?
Yeah, I'm going to leave some those details to staff to answer, but I can say that the reason why we are specifically recommending these items is because, again, over the last 5 months, we've been going through data. Certainly, we also have a comprehensive survey on both of fair housing as well as community development that we've launched, learned a lot. So each of these items, we could do better. So that's why they're there. The biggest challenge, and again, I'm who's passing on to you, is that HUD does provide very limited resources to all its jurisdictions to really deal with a multi-million-dollar set of issues and challenges. And so these are priorities. We can certainly have probably a list of 50, but with the limited resources that are provided by the federal government, we had to definitely make some decisions. You all have to make some decisions, I should say, and this is what we came up with.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add on to that, as you come, I mean, one of the things about the legal counsel, we've struggled in the desert forever, really, with finding pro bono or low income workers. I know, I think even now it goes out to Riverside Legal Services. Has anything changed in terms of how many lawyers are here in the Coachella Valley, or are they all kind of commuting in, or we're requiring people to commute out? Obviously, a lot can be done on Zoom, but there's something to be said about working with clients in person.
Yeah, so to your second question, the city did contract as of last year that was approved with services with Riverside Legal Aid Services. They're out of Riverside. They do have an office in Indio. And what's different with them, as opposed to our previous provider that we had for many, many years, is that they actually have an attorney on staff that can provide that legal counsel. So that was one of the biggest changes, and it was a reflection of what we saw continually on questionnaires that we would send out to the community. We have daily requests of people calling into even the city manager's office, requesting, very urgent, very last-minute request to speak with legal counsel. So they were happy to say that we are contracting with an agency that can provide legal assistance directly with an attorney. And again, it's Riverside Legal Aid. What also was started, and actually we were expecting a bigger demand, was workshops. So we have on our website, we have a set schedule for workshops, legal workshops. So what they do is Riverside Legal Aid, they show up, we do them at the James O. Jesse Center, and they have set dates, and they show up and they try to basically educate and bring awareness to to their clients. Obviously, we want to focus on the populations that have the highest needs. So, these are CDBG funds. They do have requirements, and they would need to be low MOT or low income residents. So, and going back to your first question, why and how we chose these things, and what is kind of like the bigger need and what can we expand on. We continually receive input from the community, so that, through partners, service providers, basically all levels of agency, the county, elected officials, because we hear kind of the same stories. But as Daryl pointed out, the funding for CDBG, even though it's very malleable, there's very little funding like this available that can pay for these kinds of things. It's very limited. Our allocation is continually, diminishing. It's going down. It's just one of those things that we are continuing to work on. So it was decided as of last fiscal year to apply all the funds for the rehab program. So we were able to create a big impact there. One of the biggest needs that we see on the assessments is rehabilitation. So trailer parks, trailer park rehabilitations, even owners that have been in their homes, 2, 3 decades, and they need repairs, roof repairs. So this program can do that, but again, it's very limited. So we had such a big demand last year when it was started. Again, the city had already established a small repairs program, But then, given the demand, it was kind of expanded, and we raised the limit on how much a single household can receive assistance. So that was increased. And again, focusing all over needs, but it's just not enough money.
Sure. Thank you.
We're good? Okay. A question on the administration expense, 20% maximum. Is that going back into programming, or is that administration expense being taken?
So staff recommends, to, for better use of funds and for, to have a bigger impact, we recommend that we increase, we add that amount into the rehab program. So it's about $68,000.
Yeah. And I know for a good number of years, we've been doing that. But I think we started doing that because we weren't putting a lot of other money into these programs. And now we're putting, I don't know if we're at the millions. So I'm wondering what the $6.8 million deficit, if it's still the best use of those admin funds when we're dedicating so much money into the program activity already. Any thought on that, Council? Oh, thank you. Thank you, staff.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So is there any, I'm curious, are there any outstanding HUD findings or improvements that we're working through still, or is that all clear?
You're talking operations-wise as far as?
On their block grant reviews, audits?
No, we have no findings. Everything, is in order with HUD. The only thing, again, that is pending, it's kind of, we're working day to day with our HUD rep as far as changes in the, federal funding happenings. But other than that, we have very well-established guidelines for the program. We're keeping, good record of, all the changes. I mean, doing these kinds of things, procedural things, that there's really no findings.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers online?
We have no speakers online.
And no one in-house, correct?
No one in-house signed up to speak.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Now, do we have any additional discussion or questions, Council? Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address your comment about the admin expenses and current budget, I think since this is such a small amount, I think it is meaningful to go towards our total program money, but also because we don't really use additional funds for the attorneys in terms of programming with Riverside Legal Aid, and then the home rehabilitation. It's kind of, this is the only pot of money that we really are using for those programs. So I would prefer to continue doing that, putting the admin money towards those. But then the other just comment I wanted to make is, this is again kind of the issue that we continue to have. We're funding Riverside Legal Aid. Part of it is because of the requirements that we have for CDBG, but we've continued to just run into these issues with attorneys. One attorney in Indio is just really not enough to really be meaningful. And so I just say this really for the public in general, for us, that this is a need in our community to have more legal aid attorneys. So if anyone is thinking about that, we encourage you to do so. And if there are funding opportunities for that, we should be looking out for that as a city. How do we fund more of these types of attorneys doing work in our city, or even working to just make sure that we're developing a list of attorneys who may be willing to take on pro bono cases like this from time to time as well, because being able to refer to a list of local attorneys who are willing to do this work would be great. So I don't know, a City Attorney Ballinger, I know that you probably internally at your office have lists of people that do this type of work, but if there's a larger community list that we can create, I would certainly love to help with that. And then just the one other thing is, if we can help with just advertising some of those workshops that are happening at JOJ a little bit more broadly, and work with the communications team, I think that would be great, and potentially even hosting them at different locations around the city, just because sometimes you get different folks that come out to different locations. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to ask, maybe Jay Verada might be better to answer this. Do we have other pots of money for the residential rehab? I think we did the Santiago grant, but I don't know if we have any others.
Yeah, the grant, yes.
That's correct. The Santiago grant is an application that's just gone in, so we do not yet have those funds. And as you know, we do have funding from the TOT housing funds, which could assist, but again, competing for what are dwindling funds as projects are lined up for implementation. So those are pretty much what we have now.
So that, and there's TOT and other ones. I mean, we've sort of set programs already for
Absolutely,
for
that-
community land trust and for first home ownership and some of
Correct.
these affordable housing units. So and I mentioned this because I've actually heard from residents who have, I heard from a senior, low income person who had their roof repaired and I don't think it was that expensive, but it was life changing for them. So, my view is that if we have this small amount of money and we could put, into the residential rehab, I would support that. I understand the mayor's concerns about our budget shortfall and maybe there's other shifts around, or we could consider other funds into this. I would not want to lower the amount of residential rehab we have because this is really significant for residents.
Yes, and if I may, as we pursue additional grants, we are definitely structuring them to take advantage of the administrative allocations for staff.
You may have the admin covered elsewhere in that. Okay, terrific.
Councilmember Reddy?
So just, I wasn't clear, if the administrative expenses, that 20% is going to go towards where? Which category?
Residential rehab. This
Residential
would be the rehab program, Councilmember.
Okay, so I would just note that, I agree with Mayor DeHart that, that's why HUD allows the administrative to help cities offset that cost. That being said, I agree with my other colleagues, it's not it's a large amount of money, but it's not that large. You probably get a bigger bang for the buck going into the HUD, into the CDBG programs, the housing rehab. So I guess I would support that, but if our deficit continues to grow in future years, that's something we could come back to. So I'm okay with it as a caution.
And thinking of kind of the sustainability of the resources and tools that we're giving to residents in terms of those workshops, like if there's any collateral that can then be, PDFs that people can download, not just 6 months from now, but maybe a year or 2 years from now, as that funding is not something that we can necessarily bank on, that we'll be able to have these workshops 2 years from now, but how can someone still benefit from that information? So for any of our events, how can we make sure that there's something that is a bit evergreen that can last a little bit longer?
Yes, additional social media announcements through other channels are always helpful. I will note, and Mr. Arechiga can confirm for me that our residential rehab wait list is already 2 years out?
Yeah,
3 years,
basically
3 years
2
out?
years, yeah.
And the additional administrative funds going towards that will serve 2 to 3 additional residential rehab projects.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So someone who hears about it now, it might be benefiting a year or two out. So kind of a website where you can download these resources. Social media is great, but it can be really hard to search past things. And so having like a digital home where this stuff lives would be wonderful.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a final comment. So Jay, on the implementation side of this, you're coming up on the end of the fiscal year for HUD. How much of the previous year will you have left over? How is your spend down? Because that was always an issue with HUD.
I'll have Noe answer that.
I can chime in on that. So I actually ran the report this morning, and we're like at 1.2% So we're allowed to have up to 1.5 times of our allocation. So we are definitely in the green. We're doing, I mean, really, really good in that sense. It was a little bit of a slow start this fiscal year because we had to do some adjustments. Again, last year's program was basically the pilot program for the large rehab program. And so we had to make some adjustments, go through council, and we had some amendments with the contractor that is helping us with, you know, the bidding out of the projects, the actual construction side of those projects. So, but we are currently working with 4 households as we speak, and we are hoping that we can help maybe 4 more with the money that we have allocated for this fiscal year.
So could I ask you of the roughly that 344,000, how much will be left of that at the end of this fiscal year that's not been spent?
Well, as at the end of this fiscal year, well, we have about 3 months. If everything goes well, I mean, it's well under $100,000 if we don't spend it all. Just depending on the timing, bidding of projects, the construction time, and if we're able to get people to work on the projects right away. But I think if we can get them through, we should be able to maybe even go through the entire allocation. But we're definitely not behind.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, not behind on the spending requirements with HUD.
Well, is there any, what would it take to be able to get the funds spent in a year?
We're trying. We are trying very hard. So that's actually the goal, you know, to do that. But, you know, it's we just don't know. There's a lot of changes. But we have, again, as Jay mentioned, we have a wait list. We have the people. It's the city's duty to basically get them eligible, make sure we have all the requirements in, and then we pass them on through our service provider that's actually handling. You know, we do an inspection, and then we also they bid out the project, and then they see the work through. So I mean, that's the goal.
Councilmember Garner?
Thank you. Just one more thing. I almost forgot. There's the Inland Empire Latino Lawyers Association. They're actually just now going to be starting a housing clinic and legal services. So I can connect you with them as well, because that's another resource that we didn't have before. And just for the public, they are doing a legal clinic on March 26th at Lift to Rise, which is in Palm Desert. And they won't be doing housing that day, but they'll be doing other family law, expungements, other things like that. But I'll connect you to them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so Jay, maybe you can help me. Just recently, we approved a chunk of money, and we increased the amount that any resident would be able to get to like $12,000 or $15,000. What is that program?
That's the tenant-based rental assistance program.
And in that program, we got $1 million or something. We added an extra $1 million.
We refunded it. It was actually all exhausted. So because of the need and the demand and the request from the community, we added another $1 million to that program. But to keep from having that be exhausted as quickly, we created these tranches where each quarter only $250,000 of that $1 million could be spent.
And in that program, people can get their roofs repaired, plumbing repaired.
Actually, no. And that program is specifically to help with living expenses such as rent and utilities.
Okay, so we increased the 12 to 15,000 to accommodate hire an extra month's rent or something.
It's still at 12,000.
12, okay.
And that's the limit that any individual can receive.
Yeah, okay. And what's that called, that program?
Tenant-based rental assistance, TBRA.
TBRA, okay. So is there a way we can dedicate the $68,000 to legal aid since we don't have that earmarked in other areas?
It's currently, as proposed, earmarked for the residential rehab. The legal aid is under a category called public service, and they are getting
the max.
51,000 max already. And even because of that limitation, even if we wanted to, move the 68,000 over to the legal aid. We could not because of the HUD limitations of 15%.
And we already have the max. Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, do we have any other discussion? Okay, is there a motion? By Councilmember Garner, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any other discussion? Please vote. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 3A, which is a request for a city council appointee to the Erica JPA. Sounds so fancy. Do we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and council members, the item before you, the ERICA is what the Eastern Riverside County Regional Authority is preparing to disband the Joint Powers Authority and requires a council member appointee for the final meeting, which is scheduled for April 10th, 2025. At this meeting, the board will move to adopt the JPA dissolution, formally approving the decision to terminate and dissolve the JPA, ending the agreement with participating agency. So the recommendation is for council to appoint a council member to serve on the ERICA JPA, this final meeting to disband. So we're asking that you appoint a member for one meeting. The meeting will be April 10th, and it will be available via Zoom. So we were gonna use the last two appointees, but neither of them are here. So we had to come back. They required that someone from our area be a representative for this last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or discussion from council?
Do you know what time the meeting
And
is?
the first person who speaks gets to be the volunteer.
Do we know what time the meeting is?
It's usually at 4:00. It'll be on and you will be able to Zoom into it. So Zoom will be available, so you won't have to travel or go anywhere.
Well, I will do it.
Okay.
Is there a motion to appoint Councilmember Bernstein to the Erica JPA position? We need a motion.
Let's see. Hold on one second. Got you right here.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilmember Gardner. Any other discussion? Congratulations, Councilmember Bernstein.
It's going on.
Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. Time's been set aside for members of the public to address City Council on items of general interest within subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although City Council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed. 2 minutes are assigned to each speaker, and first speaker is Michael Joseph Pitkin.
Michael Joseph Pitkin. In Nevada, the state was not correctly allocating HIV grant funding. Reno was spending all HIV funding on homeless youth. For my speaking up, I was poisoned, sheetrock in my meds. I was hit with microwave, radio wave, Havana syndrome. I had over 60 heart attacks, laying me flat on the sidewalk. My cardiologist saying, "There's nothing wrong with your heart." I have experience with LA HIV Commission. We crafted the National HIV Strategy for President Obama. DAP Health did write the HIV strategy, a reason I moved to Palm Springs 5 years ago. Surprisingly, DAP Health's BIPOC community refused to care for me. I was not like them. They wanted my Ryan White grant solely for Borrego merger, only helping me if I moved to Riverside or Indio. Indirectly told to my face, I am not receiving any benefits for worshiping the devil. In Palm Springs, I have been denied HIV care, HUD housing, U.S. mail, employment, telephone, 40 years of email, voting, connecting with family, transportation, and referred to Senior 5150, 5250, and entrapment for being gay. I publicly state I will not agree, consent to any and all of my citizen and HIV medical efforts being deterred, blocked, to then be forced into Department of Corrections, State of California, Riverside County Crisis Services.
Thank you. And our next item is Andrew Golt.
for an hour, but 2 minutes. Oh,
The other mic.
timer right here. I've been introduced. Thank you, council members, for hearing my plea tonight. My wife and I live in Tramview Mobile Home Park, which is immediately adjacent to the golf course known as JC Golf, Cathedral Canyon Golf Club. They've got a problem of balls flying over the fence. The golf course distance to our house is probably the width of this building here, 50, 60 feet at most. And a golf ball almost hit my wife. We heard it come whistling through the trees. She ducked. I wrote a nastygram to the golf course. A gentleman called me back a week later, the golf pro manager, and he threw me under the bus. Maybe I should have gotten a hard hat or something, but I escalated the situation to somewhere higher up. It's a privately owned company, JC Golf, Cathedral Canyon Golf Course. It might be Hyatt, but it's owned by a private guy in San Diego, Mr. Paul Reed. In any case, golf balls are flying through the air. They're high-speed projectiles. One hit our vehicle, one's hit the house. It's a common occurrence. The gentleman I spoke to from San Diego was very courteous, very kind, very polite, but there's a matter of a net that needs to be installed. Someone's installed a net, this golf course presumably, that protects the Acura automobiles from being hit by flying golf balls. Maybe the insurance companies weren't happy making payouts for dents in their vehicles, but we've got golf balls flying off the golf course. People are supposed to be aiming their golf balls this way, they're going that way. And they come over with some regularity, once, twice a week, and they come flying at high speed. It's quite dangerous, and I wonder, being as we're in Cathedral City, the golf course being only 50 feet away is in Palm Springs. So who's in charge of forcing the golf course or convincing them or to install a very expensive net? The manager that called me, Mr. Dawson Hess, told me he wasn't going to lose any sleep, and it's not fiscally responsible to install what's probably a few $100,000 net. It's got to be done. I said to him, we can talk all you want. I spoke to the next guy. We can talk all you want. You've got to put up a net. We need a net to protect people and property. Thank you, council members.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers registered online?
No additional speakers.
All right. Next, we are on City Council, City Manager request and upcoming agenda development. Mr. City Manager.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Just wanted to highlight a couple things coming up on some of our future council meetings. At our next meeting, I know council members have been interested to get an update on how our navigation center is performing for our unhoused community. So we'll have our staff here along with representatives from Martha's Village and Kitchen who are managing the facility on our behalf. We'll also have Police Chief Mills and our PD to talk a little bit about how they're interacting with everything as well. We do have to bring forward an extension of some contracts with the Plaza Theater as that work continues towards opening later this year. And I did add this third item, which I'm calling Convention Center Strategic Planning Services. So council will recall that you have appointed the mayor and Councilman Bernstein to work with me on a convention center tourism and stakeholders working group. And we had our third meeting last night, and they've been very productive. We've had really good turnout. I know I've sent you some of the information about that. I've got some more information to send you from that meeting last night, which I'll be doing. But what we want to do is we thought the timing is really good to bring you up to speed on the work that's been done, what we're contemplating doing. We know how important the convention center is to our community. So I'll be working with Wayne Olson, our Chief Economic Development Officer, and Chris Mooney, our Finance Director, to bring some information forward to you. I know the mayor and the councilman also want to share some important perspective from their participation on the working group. So we'll plan to do that at the next meeting. You'll see that in April will be, we want to bring forward the very important library bond that we're working towards and going out to bid on the renovation of the library. That will be a public hearing. We do have to bring forward our comprehensive fee schedule as a public hearing, which we're required to do periodically. And then, as you discussed earlier today in the CDBG discussion, I know our housing staff want to bring forward an update for you on our community land trust initiative that's part of the council set-aside funds that you've put aside for housing. So we want to talk a little bit about the work they're doing. I know City Attorney Ballinger wants to bring back some of the final tweaks to the co-owned housing ordinance that you all have asked him to bring back, and so we'll plan for that. Second meeting in April, we've got our second second public hearing on the presentation you heard this evening, and then we also have to bring back the comprehensive fee schedule. So, and then May and June will be very busy. We've got a lot of budget meetings planned. We'll have more to roll out on that. I know we have joint meetings with our commissions and some other things going on. So more to come. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Council? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, City Manager. I have a request for council to think about, and I'm not sure on the timing, how much time you need, but as the small grants program's going to be renewed or have kind of its kind of new round of funding starting May 1st, asking if staff can add a criteria for nonprofits and organizations that are potentially impacted by the volatile government funding that we anticipate possibly experiencing in the next 12 months. So thinking of like our vulnerable communities, our trans community, there's organizations that are serving really important vulnerable people in our city, and brainstorming, having some type of proposal around possibly having the small grants program as a possible venue of supporting organizations that are impacted by any funding fluctuations.
So that's a request for an agenda item to come back. Do we have consensus?
Just to clarify, because the program is staff-run, so we are going to come up with an agenda item to direct staff on their program?
Asking staff to kind of add a criteria. So how would they possibly update the grants program that's going to renew on May 1st?
This would have to happen soon.
Right.
Yes, members of council, if I could just chime in a quick second. We're obviously, working on the new 2-year budget, and we're contemplating what funding might be available for small grants and partnerships. I've talked to the administrator of that. One of the things we do want to do is tweak some of the criteria and get some of council's feedback on how we make some of those decisions. So the timing could be fortuitous for us to do that, bring back some suggestions. So I think we could do that in the next meeting or two.
Great.
And get your feedback. That'd be helpful to us.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Anything else? So I did, on the Navigation Center update, City Manager, are you giving or requesting very specific information that you want them to include in that update?
Well, we'll have to spend a little more time talking to our staff about that. Obviously, we want to, there's a whole range of things that we could spend time talking about, just everything from the numbers of clients they're taking in, what is their success rate for placing people, how they're doing in terms of working with our police department, how the spending is going with the operating costs, which is something that we have to pay attention and track very closely. That's going to be an issue for us down the road, is how do we pay for the operating costs? Our grant covers a good piece of it, but we have more thinking to do. We're going to have to find more funding sources. We're going to have to find more grants, partnerships so that those, so that doesn't put pressure on our general fund down the road. So,
they're not giving us that kind of an update.
well, we can certainly focus on anything in particular that the council wants us to pay attention to. And
Okay.
if there's some thoughts you have, certainly take that under advisement and pass that along if we want to talk offline or share thoughts with me.
Yeah.
We'll certainly work on that.
Okay, I'm curious to see what direction you're giving them on updating. I would like to see as many measurements as we can possibly see. How many people are turned away? How many meals are actually being cooked and served? What are we looking at from a matriculation basis from the time somebody comes in for services, and then how long is it before we actually get them into any program for services? So I think there's a lot of measurements that we can get from Martha's in particular that we should be able to have a really thorough update on true numbers so we can assess how that contractor is working.
We can certainly do that, Mr. Mayor, and we'll talk to them about focusing on that.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. And no other questions? Then we have a special way to adjourn today's meeting, and Councilmember Gardner is going to take care of that for us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to close the meeting today in honor of Principal Ricky Wright. He passed away this March 8th. Principal Wright was principal of Palm Springs High School from 1997 to 2012. And this week, his memorial page and Facebook have been filled with memories from students, parents, staff members, and community members. He was loved and respected as a principal that truly cared for all students. He served as principal when I was a student at Palm Springs High School, and his support for me and all of the students was truly incredible. He remembered everyone's name and long after they were students. And in 2015, he actually ran for mayor of Palm Springs on a platform that centered young people and involving more residents in city discussions. It sounds very familiar to me, and that's because he certainly had a profound influence on my life. My sincere condolences go out to his family and everyone that knew him and loved him. Our high school will be honoring Principal Wright on Saturday, March 15th, which is this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Palm Springs Black Box Theater, if anyone is interested in attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. Our next regular city council meeting will be held on Thursday, March 27. And a reminder that city council will meet on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 5:30 p.m. with the exception of our March 27 meeting, which will be on Thursday. We are adjourned.